In this video, we're going to go through the new Maurten BiCarb system, and I'm going to give you a complete breakdown of it. I'm going to cover what it actually is and why it might be useful to you, the problems associated with it, cost, and an FAQ section at the end. As usual, quick disclaimer, I'm not affiliated or sponsored by Maurten, and I bought this with my own money so I could make as unbiased a review as possible. Although, as we're going to talk about, I kind of wish I didn't have to pay for it. Now, the active ingredient in the Maurten BiCarb system is sodium bicarbonate, or more specifically, the bicarbonate part. When I was in university doing my nutrition masters, they were always really careful about supplements, and we spent a lot of time discussing what supplements actually had a good evidence base that they had performance benefits. There are 5 supplements that do have a good evidence base for performance benefits, and those are creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine, nitrates, and you guessed it, sodium bicarbonate. But while there is good evidence for sodium bicarbonate, there's also a big problem with it, and it's one of the reasons why it's not more widely used. In uni, we also did experiments ourselves to investigate the effects of supplements, and one of these was on the effects of sodium bicarbonate on repeated cycling sprints. We were allocated into groups and given a drink, but not knowing whether it was a placebo or whether it was the supplement, and then we did our sprints. Same test the next week, but with the other drink. Now, one of the guys in the group started looking a bit pale and not in a great way about 45 minutes after he had his drink. Shortly after, he disappeared, not to be seen for the rest of the day. Turns out he had pretty bad stomach upset from the bicarbonate, and that's the big problem with it. The most common side effect is gastrointestinal upset, and for a lot of athletes, the potential risk of this outweighs the potential benefits. And this is what Maurten is aiming to change. Their suggestion is that by encapsulating the sodium bicarb in their hydrogel formula, it's going to reduce the risk of GI upset. So I put this to the test. But before we talk about my experience with it, let's talk about how it actually works. To help you understand this, we need to briefly go through how your body creates energy. There are 3 major energy pathways, and we normally use a mix of all 3 of these in daily life and during exercise. Our main pathway is aerobic respiration, and this means respiration in the presence of oxygen. We metabolize or burn a mixture of carbohydrates and fats to generate ATPs for our cells to create energy. This is a very efficient, but relatively speaking slow energy pathway, but we can use it during low to moderate intensity exercise to create energy when we have lots of oxygen available. We then have the first of our 2 anaerobic energy systems, which means respiration without oxygen. Our ATP PCR system helps us deal with short, intense movements by generating energy very quickly, but this energy system can only provide energy in bursts of up to about 30 seconds or so. Our final pathway is our anaerobic glycolytic system, and this is where Maurten BiCarb comes into play. You can turn glucose into lactate, and this conversion provides energy for your muscles. It's not that efficient though, and a byproduct of this conversion is a buildup of protons, or hydrogen ions, in your muscles, and this causes a problem. These protons cause the environment of your muscles to become more acidic, which can impair muscle function, and this obviously isn't a good thing. Your body has several systems to help deal with acidic or alkaline environments, and one of these is called your bicarbonate buffer system. You normally have bicarbonate ions floating around in your body, and these join together with protons, which helps to then increase the pH of your blood. Through clever processes, that then becomes carbon dioxide, and you can breathe that out. What we think happens when you use sodium bicarbonate as a supplement is that you make your blood pH more alkaline because there's more bicarbonate ions to pair with protons. And this creates a gradient where your muscles spit out the protons that they generate through hard exercise into your blood, which equalizes that gradient. The net result of this is that you can do higher intensity periods of exercise for longer periods of time. This prolonged high intensity benefit is shown in the literature, by the way, but we'll go through this in a bit more detail in the FAQ section at the end. So when you place your order with Maurten, you have an easy to follow section where you have to add in your weight and your experience using bicarbonate products, because Maurten adjusts the dose depending on your responses. I went for experienced user, and not because I regularly use bicarbonate products, but I wanted to see whether I would get any side effects at their max dosing. The things I do for you. Then in the post you get this fancy box where you scan the QR code, which gives you a walkthrough guide of how to use it all. The first thing you do is add water to the pot, and then you add the hydrogel mix in and shake it vigorously for 15 seconds. You do need to be careful here and make sure that you screw the lid on really tightly, because I had some spillage the first time round, which was a bit annoying, but second time was fine. Once you've waited for at least 5 minutes, then you can add the sodium bicarbonate into their jelly mix and then consume it. Although I waited for at least 6 minutes, the mixture was still quite runny, so it's not the same consistency as their gels. It has a relatively neutral taste with a little bit of sweetness, which isn't surprising since it contains 40 grams of carbs as well. It was fine to eat, although for some people I can imagine the consistency might be a bit off-putting. Maurten suggests taking it 90 minutes before exercise, which I did. So the big question, did I get any side effects? Actually, not really. The first time I did feel a bit bloated and gassy after exercise, but the subsequent times weren't as bad. Overall, I can say I didn't really get any significant side effects, and it wouldn't put me off using it during exercise. However, I will caveat this and say that during university, when I did the experiments as well, I didn't get that much in the way of side effects then either. Now, do I think that it actually worked? In truth, I don't know. I performed well during high intensity efforts, but the only way to really know here would be to experiment and do blind testing where you then analyse the results to look for significance afterwards. That's not realistic for me to do, so I'm going to have to do two things. One is that I'm going to have to trust that Maurten are using sodium bicarbonate in their product. And two, trust the research that says sodium bicarbonate is beneficial, and hence this product is beneficial. And to be honest, I am happy to do that. Okay, so now on to the cost of this. It costs £60 for 4 servings, which, if I'm honest, is absolutely mind-blowing. £15 per serving, of which Maurten suggests you could use this 2 to 3 times per week. Now, that is a lot of money that you could put into this. If you look at a competitor like 60 Sports Nutrition who sells sodium bicarb capsules, then the maths works out as about £3 per serving compared to Maurten's 15. What you are paying for here is Maurten's hydrogel technology and, quite honestly, excellent marketing. If you want to use sodium bicarb regularly, then you could definitely consider trying other brands to see if you get any side effects, and if you don't, that might save you about £1 million. So let's move on to some quickfire questions about the Maurten bicarb system. When should you use it? Sodium bicarb is most effective during short, high-intensity intervals lasting between 60 seconds to 12 minutes. There's no evidence to suggest that it's beneficial for long-distance endurance events like marathons or Ironman triathlons. If you're doing an interval session or a race with lots of short, hard effort, then you could benefit from it. Is there any long-term benefit to using it? This is a really interesting question, and let me explain what I mean. There's clear short-term benefit from using sodium bicarbonate, but the question is, if you used it over the long term and did harder intervals as a result, would you benefit more than if you hadn't been using it in the first place? Well, there is some evidence that suggests yes, there is benefit by using this as a supplement over the long term. However, we don't have enough evidence to conclusively say that at the moment. How much does it actually benefit you? Average is 2 to 3% performance increase. How long should you use it before exercise? Literature advises between 60 to 180 minutes. Maurten advised 90. What should you eat before it? Go for whatever you would have eaten. If it's a high intensity session or racing, then it's likely to be a carbohydrate rich, low fat, low fiber, and low to moderate protein option. Have breakfast about 1 to 2 hours before you consume the bicarb. Do you need to change your salt intake? You might have noticed the name sodium bicarbonate. So yes, this does contain sodium and a fair whack of it. However, my suggestion would be to just do your normal hydration plan. Is it safe? Yep, should be. Other than unpleasant side effects, sodium bicarbonate should be safe for most people. What happens if you get side effects? You could try to reduce the dose and see if that reduces the side effects. Another strategy that you can do is to have smaller doses to make up the same total dose over about 6 to 8 hours before exercise. A bit difficult with the Maurten stuff, I suppose you could just make it all up in one go and just eat smaller amounts over that period of time. However, side effects are exactly what Maurten are trying to avoid, so that would kind of make the product defunct. Is the dose correct? Yep, in keeping with 0.3 grams of sodium bicarbonate per kilogram of body weight. Are there any negatives? There is a suggestion that for some people, sodium bicarbonate could be ergolytic, meaning causing a performance decrease. It has been shown in studies, although not regularly, so this is important to consider. You're also going to be taking a supplement, so you'll never know exactly what's in it and whether it contains any other substances. You can use programs like Inform Sport to minimize this risk, which is especially important if you're involved in competitive sport. So I think that covers everything. If you've got any questions, then let me know in the comments. So until next time, nutrition nerds.